Hey everybody, David Costello here, CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Nikki Rausch, and we're going to be talking about something that maybe not a lot of people want to talk about, and that is sales. She's the founder and CEO of Sales Maven, an organization dedicated to authentic selling. I mean, my goodness, if we need to be more pressing in a time to have authentic selling, I mean, this is it, right? So, and she has the unique ability to transform what she calls the misunderstood process of selling into techniques, tools, and tips that can be successfully incorporated into a process that you can repeat by anyone whose livelihood relies on selling a product, service, or themselves, which for everybody listening, just to clue you in, that's you. If you're listening to this, that is you. So having said that, Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talked a little bit before we went ahead and hit record, and the way you said that you love selling, I mean, your face lit up. You're excited about it. You're like, I love selling. Why? Let's start there. Like, why do you love selling? Obviously, we're going to get into everything that you do, but I need to start there because that's not what most people say.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the reason I love selling is because I am all about building strong relationships and building rapport. I love people and I love to be of service. So when I think about sales, my job is not to try to convince somebody of something. It's not to change anybody's mind. My job is to understand, hey, what's going on with you? What's the need? What's the problem? What's the desire for you right now? And do I have a solution that is going to get that met for you? And if so, then I feel like that's my servant's heart coming through going like, hey, here is something that may actually solve this problem for you. Are you interested in this? Yes or no? So that's how I think about sales. Build relationships, understand what somebody needs. And man, doesn't it feel great to give something to somebody or offer somebody an opportunity to really get that need, that want, that problem, like a solution? What's better than a solution? So that's how I think about sales.
I love it. It's such a problem solver mindset to sales. And the quote that came to mind as you're kind of talking about your mindset is, I never look at sales personally as I'm going to go out and generate demand. I'm going to go in, cook up some deals. No, the demand exists. There's pain out in the world. How do you go out and find the people with those painful problems and connect them to the solution that makes their lives better? So I have to ask this, no, you're not really born, or at least most people aren't. Maybe you are. Most people are not born with this sales mindset where I'm going to come out and that's what selling means. So when and how did you adopt that mindset towards selling?
Well, I am also not somebody that you would say was born with a sales mindset. I am quite shy, actually. And I fall on the introverted scale, which is sometimes counter to what people think of when they think of a sales person. I, out of college, kind of fell into this amazing sales job. And what I started realizing as I kind of worked my way up that company, I eventually became their national sales manager. But what I realized was that everybody has their own unique kind of style. And what it's about is figuring out how to show up and be your authentic self and find a way to really connect with the other person. And again, provide that solution. And it really was when I got offered a position to move to a very large manufacturer, one of the largest companies in the world. And I had this opportunity to move into this sales position. And the guy that was the sales manager, the regional sales manager who I was replacing, he had been, promoted. He was this big personality, like huge personality. He was the life of the party. Anytime there was any kind of fun function, he was always the loudest voice, just this life of the party. Well, that was not me at all. And so he had built this successful territory for the company. And here I come and I was like, how am I going to fill this guy's shoes? Because this is not me at all. So what I started realizing was it isn't about filling his shoes. It's about making real connections with the clients that we have and building those relationships, building that know, like, and trust factor. And at the time, I also started studying neuro-linguistic programming. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, NLP for short. It's the study of communication. And I got really interested in how can I improve my skill set from a conversation, from the communication side, to put people at ease, to really make deep, lasting connections. And that's really where the magic was found for me, was at that level of realizing, hey, you don't have to pretend to be like somebody else. You don't have to take on somebody else's personality. And this is why I'll say this. I say this to my clients all the time, and I say this on the air all the time. It's like, my job is to not teach you how to sell like me. My job is to teach you how to be strategic in your conversations so that your own personality shines through, so that you can attract those ideal clients and, frankly, repel the people who are not a good fit for your business. And then the sales process gets so much easier.
Okay. So, by the way, for people that don't know about NLP, really great stuff, really, really foundational stuff. So we'll link it up in the show notes, maybe. And Nikki, if you have some recommended overview resources, YouTube videos, PDFs, books, whatever it may be, just let me know.
Okay.
But let's get really practical. So, can you talk about a client that you had that maybe was sales resistant? They were nervous about selling. They always looked down. They didn't like eye contact. They had this whole, walk me through how you teach them to show up to be their authentic self. And if you have a specific example without naming names that you can
Yeah.
walk through before and after, I mean, we'd love to hear it.
Well, it reminds me of a client that I actually had pretty early on in my business, who she wanted to coach with me, and she was a remote client. So we weren't physically in the same location, and she refused to have her camera on. So we were meeting over Zoom for our coaching calls because she didn't want to be on camera. She was uncomfortable on camera. And she worked a lot of like events. That was where she got the bulk of her clients. And she used to always say, like, I'm so awkward. Like, I'm really awkward. And then I get really nervous, and it puts people off. And then I think they don't hire me because I don't come across confident. So one of the things that we really worked on was dug into, okay, let's talk about the conversation that's happening at these events. And also, let's lean into this. I wouldn't say it awkward. Like, I wouldn't call her awkward. I would actually call her charming. Like, first of all, you got to reframe that a little bit. And she is very charming, and she kind of has this like a little bit of a, kind of goofier personality. So let's lean into that. Let's let that show through. And then let's be strategic in the questions that you ask people. So instead of trying to pretend to have a bunch of small talk with people who are coming by at the vendor event, I taught her one technique of how to just even slow people down when they're walking by at vendor events. So I don't know if you've been to a lot of trade shows. You have those sometimes, like the people who are working the booth, like, kind of want to pounce on the people who are in the aisles because they're like, I'm here to sell, so I'm going to pounce on you. And that makes the people who are walking down the aisles uncomfortable. So instead, I taught her, like, how about, like, do you like to give people compliments? She's like, I do. I was like, great. Then I want you, everybody who walks by, I want you to think of an authentic compliment about them. Right? Not about you, but about them. Something that is, and it can't be just like, hey, you look nice today, because that's too generic. It needs to be really specific. So it could be like, wow, the color of that necklace really pairs nicely with your blouse. Like, something very specific that's to them. But be authentic about it and see if that slows people down, which she found it did. And then when they slow down, they're like, well, what do you do? And now it's, how do you answer that question? What do you do? So we worked through, how do you answer that question? And then how do you invite people to sign up, which is what we were doing, was signing up to be on her mailing list with an opportunity to then sell to them. And so she just found that all of a sudden things got easier. People would slow down. They would start a conversation with her. And then from there, they would want to know more. And now she's on the lookout, because I also teach buying signals. So be on the lookout for the buying signal, invite the person to the next step. And she started booking consultations, which she had never done before. Like, booking these consultations with people, which then ultimately result in clients.
Yeah.
And it all came from, like, be authentic. Let's use this kind of piece about yourself that you feel uncomfortable with, but let's find something that, okay, doesn't really make it about you, frankly. Make it about the other person. Take the pressure off yourself.
Yeah, you know what? That's such a big takeaway. I think when people think about selling, they think of like, oh, what am I going to say and how am I going to act and what am I going to be like and how should I dress? And it's me, 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 me,
Yep.
which is the exact opposite of what I view, and sounds like what you view, as a great selling conversation, great relationship. Like when you were talking, it was like, yeah, be a human,
Yeah.
have an interest in another person, and show up and be present and be curious about other people. And it's just kind of like this regrounding in what selling is. And I think, I don't know why, but it's become so distorted with all these tricks and tactics and tools. If they talk slow, you talk slow. If they talk fast, you talk fast. And we get so into all these little tactics about, we get in our own head and we forget to just be human, ask
Hmm.
questions, and be present.
Well, so not to take away, because I will say there is something to said about like matching and mirroring, which is what you just said. Like if they talk slow your pace down a little bit. And I teach that concept too. But what happens is
Yeah, full
when you
disclosure, by
start,
the way, sorry to interrupt. You're the expert. I'm not the expert, right? So during this interview, if I say something and you disagree, if people listening, listen to Nikki. She's been doing this way more than I have. I'm here to learn just as much as all the listeners as well.
well, and so what I was going to say about that is that that technique works, but what it's really about is making it, it's about paying attention to the other person. And your job in the sales process is to put somebody at ease. And when you will, like, especially when it has to do with rate of speech, because if you have a certain rate of speech, somebody's a really, really fast talker, and you want to earn the business of somebody who has a slower rate of speech, it's hard for people like that to be in conversation. So if you're willing to slow down just a bit, what will then happen is they will also be willing to speed up just a bit. And then you find yourself meeting in the middle. And now you're having authentic, real conversation. And so again, it's this idea of like, make the client the priority in the relationship. Put them first, because if you do put the relationship first, it takes the pressure off of the sale, because sales isn't something you do to somebody. It's something you do for somebody. It's not to them. Like, we don't want to talk at people. We want to talk with people, right? We don't want to get something out of somebody. What we're trying to do instead is find out, do you have a problem, a need? And if so, do I have a solution that's right for you? And are you interested in hearing about it? Yes or no? And if you are interested in hearing about it, here it is. And then, does that sound like something you'd like to move forward with? So I actually do teach a 5-step process in sales that I call the selling staircase. And it's your job to move a client from step to step to step. And one of the biggest mistakes that people often make in the sales process is we try to skip steps. And this is where
Mm.
people come off like gross and salesy, or the conversation feels awkward or weird. It's because, I mean, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if somebody meets you and they're like, hey, David, I hear, you guys have this software and you probably need companies that do what we do. Like, do you want to buy from us? And you're like,
Oh, goodness.
who are you?
Hang up,
Yeah.
delete email.
Yeah, like, stop skipping steps in the process. You don't get to go right from introduction to close. There's a process to this. And that means the relationship comes in every step. There has to be rapport. And if there isn't rapport, frankly, people are not going to buy from you. They don't have to. There's
Yeah.
too many solutions out there. There's so many other people who do some version of what you do. Like, we all have competitors. There's a million other sales coaches you can go and hire. It's, do I connect with Nikki? And if I connect with Nikki, does she have something that's of value to me? And if so, is it something I'm willing to invest in? And if the answer is yes, then we have the opportunity to work together. But if the
Yeah.
answer isn't yes to any of those questions, I bless and release those people. My job is to not try to convince. My job is to not try to sway somebody or manipulate anybody. It's like, here's the option. Are you interested? Yes or no? And if no, that's okay. You're
Yeah.
still a good person. I'm still a good person. I wish you well.
Yeah. And sometimes saying that at the beginning of the conversation, look, ask you a couple questions, and if it's not a good fit, I'm going to let you know, pressure either
Yeah.
way. So if it's okay with you, I think the direction I'd like to go with the interview is, I'd like to unpack what the staircase is. Obviously, we can't get into all the specifics. I'm sure that's what you have a lot of material on. And then
Yeah.
I also want to talk about, a world in which, so we're recording this, everybody's work from home, COVID-19 is going on, there's a impending recession, and maybe, look, somebody listens to this 2 months from now, they're like, there's no recession, everything worked out, and I just look like a foolish host. Hey,
I
that's
hope
amazing.
that's the
I hope
case,
that's the case too.
right?
But I think I think obviously selling is not going to go anywhere. And I think for people that are listening to it and maybe the short term they've transitioned to virtual sales, or maybe they found something that they really like about work from home kind of the world. And I'd love to talk through how that changes or what you have to be mindful of when you go to a remote selling environment if you're used to maybe an offline one. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to unpack the staircase at a high level and then talk
Yeah.
about how to implement things like this in a remote virtual work from home type environment.
Okay. So there are 5 steps in the selling staircase, and I'll just kind of walk through each one and give you a little bit of a description of each. So hopefully that helps. And I do have a book on this too. For anybody who's interested, you can get the book. It's called The Selling Staircase, Mastering the Art of Relationship Selling. It's available, where books are sold, right?
Yeah.
So the
It,
first step in, sorry.
Nikki, sorry, just is a hook right there. The first step. Look, before I just want to say I conceptually buy into this staircase idea so much so, and I just want to reinforce the idea that I think when people are stressed out, when they're anxious about their business, that is when there's a tendency to skip the fundamentals, skip the steps, and go straight for please buy, please buy, please buy.
Yes.
So, if you're listening to this interview and you kind of feel that in your firm right now, and you're just like, you just feel that, whatever that word is, that feeling. Breathe and remember to not skip the steps because that
Yes.
I believe look, what you're about to say. And look, everybody listen, I don't know what you're about to say, but I know when you skip steps, bad things happen, right? Whether it's baking a
Right.
cake or selling, you want to have the steps in place. So, anyways, having said that, the first step.
Well, and I'm going to add on to that if I can just for a second, because this is one of the things that I love about neurolinguistic programming is there's a presupposition that there is a structure to excellence. And this is why I continually teach structure and step-by-step approach, because when you understand structure, when you understand what the steps are, you can implement these into your business or into your conversation or into anything that you want to be, excel at. And so this is why I've broken this down into these 5 steps. And this is also why, a lot of times with sales, a lot of times there's a, fill your sales funnel, pay attention to the funnel. And I get the funnel concept, but the funnel concept is a lot of lead generation. Where it falls down is in the actual conversation. How do you move somebody through conversation, step by step to where you get the place where you exchange dollars for services or product? So again, the first step in the process is the introduction step. That's where you want to make a powerful first impression. People are being introduced to you or your business or the concept of possibly even like, what do you do, right? So making a powerful first impression in the introduction step is super important. And that leads then, when you make a powerful first impression, it nicely lends itself to step 2, which is to create curiosity. And creating curiosity is a planting seed type exercise because we don't always know when we're in conversation with somebody or at the very beginning, like, do I even have anything that would be of interest to them? Are they even looking for something like this? And if you're not able to create curiosity, you can never move to the next kind of steps. Because if people aren't like, tell me more about that, David, or like, oh, I'd like to know more about what you guys are doing or how this might serve me in some way. So creating curiosity, and I can dig into any of these more that you want to, but just to kind of go through the process.
Yeah, I have a bunch of follow-up questions, but
Okay, good.
I'll let you run through them.
Okay. So once you create curiosity, a lot of times what happens in that step is people will start to give you potential buying signals. And a buying signal is a verbal or nonverbal cue that indicates interest. It would be like somebody going like, I wonder if what you do would work in my firm. Okay. So that's a buying signal. I call that like ding, ding, ding. Pay attention to those. So then your next step in the process, step 3, is the discovery. And the way you move people through these steps is you issue invitations along the way. Because if you think people are just going to move on their own, they won't. They're going to just hang out on a step because they don't know what to do next. You're the person who's the expert. It's your job to move them. So in that kind of to move to a discovery, if somebody's like, I wonder if that would work in my firm, I want you to say, is that something you'd like to talk about more? Like, let's schedule a time to do that, or let's talk about that now, or whatever. And you wait for them to give you permission. Yes. So now we're in step 3. The job of the discovery is to not sell, by the way. The job of the discovery is to understand what's going on for them, what's their problem, what's their need, and to ask strategic questions that lead people down the road to hiring you. So asking questions about the things that you do, not asking a bunch of questions of like, oh, well, I want to get to know every little thing about this person's business. You probably don't need to know every little thing in order to earn their business. So be strategic, ask the right questions, and then that leads very clearly to step 4, which is proposal. And the way you move to proposal is to say something as simple to somebody as, based on what we've talked about, I do see a couple ways that this might work for you. Are you interested in hearing about how, like, what that would look like? Now we're getting a yes or no, right? When you get a yes, now we're in proposal. Now in the proposal step 4, it's your job to clearly lay out what the recommendation is for them. So I always say, recommend what they need, not what you think they can afford. Because if you've done a well-done discovery, you should know as the expert, what's the right solution for these people or this person or this firm or whoever you're talking to. So recommend what they need, lay it out really clearly. And then once you get to the end of laying out the offer, you're on to step 5, which is the close. And that means getting that invitation language out of your mouth and saying to somebody, here's what I would recommend. This is what this would look like. Is that something you'd like to move forward with? That's one way to say it. I just did a coaching call yesterday. I do private coaching calls with people. And she was like, oh, that feels a little too direct for me, Nikki. Like she's offering a mastermind. And I said, okay, well, if it feels direct, I change language all the time for clients. It has to come out of your mouth. So I said, what if you said, based on what we've talked about, here's my recommendation for you. Is that something you'd like to participate in? And she was like, oh, so much better. I was like, great. I'll change the words all day long for you as long as you get that closed language out of your mouth.
I think that's something that's very unique about your process, where a lot of other, I think, trainers will say, no, you say these words exactly how I say them, which was going to be one of my questions for you. I think when you go through the examples here, you're Nikki the pro. You've said these things a million times and they just
Yeah.
sound perfect and polished. I think one of the hard things about selling is I don't think there's a conceptual understanding. It's like, how do you practice, right? Like everything feels like it's the big game, right? But where can you go to practice? So in your coaching community, and I think that's what holds a lot of people back, is they're like, oh, I don't know. So what's the best way for them to kind of like practice this methodology in a safe place? Like, and look, I've done this stuff a million times. I'll record myself saying things and then play it back until it sounds normal saying these things, right?
Yeah.
Like, quite frankly, when we raise money, I wasn't born knowing how to raise money. I had to practice some of these pitches multiple times, used to it. So what do you recommend for people listening if they're trying to incorporate some of the language that or perspective you talked about today?
Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. One is you can come join my membership group where you get practice and I give lots of language suggestions, and people post in the group all the time like, here's what I'm thinking about writing, or here's what I'm thinking about saying. Do you have any possible tweaks? And then sometimes they'll push back and go, oh, I won't say it like that, Nikki. So then I'll change it up for them. Or so work with somebody to do it, whether it's me or somebody else, or practice, like you said, record yourself saying it. Say it in your car when you're driving, or, before you get onto the Zoom, session, or however you're connecting with your clients now. Before you get onto that, practice saying, because it does have to roll out of your mouth, and it should roll off your tongue like it's a conversation. Because if you sound like you're scripted, okay, so should we move forward? People are like, okay, you just lost credibility with me
Well, then
because you don't
it feels
sound
like you're being
confident.
sold. Yeah, and it feels like you're being
Yeah.
sold too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you are reading from a script, but I'm a human being here. So,
Yes.
um, the I guess I know I want to talk about virtual sales and the shift there, but one of the
Hmm.
most terrifying questions I think a lot of firm owners get asked is, oh, so what do you do? So, and that's the first thing, is the introduction. So what's your perspective on how to create a authentic but powerful introduction versus like, well, we provide small businesses tax and accounting work. Okay. Like, or is that the right
Yeah.
way to do it? I don't know. Like, how do you treat introductions?
So I love to treat an introduction. I ask myself before I answer that question, what do I already know about this person? And how can I tailor my answer to be potentially interesting to them? Now, sometimes you don't know a lot about people, but you know something, right? Like you can either see them or you've gone and done a little bit of research about their company, you know kind of what they do, like you know something about people. So it's the difference of if somebody asks me, what do you do? And they're selling software versus selling real estate, my answer is going to be different. Now, what I do is the same, right? Like, so I entrepreneurs hire me to learn how to sell strategically. And then I'm going to give a for instance. And the for instance is going to be an example that's more specific to them. Now, I'm not going to say, like, so if you hire me, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to say entrepreneurs like you that are selling software have found value in this work by being able to be more strategic on their calls, have some type of a process in place so they know what step they're on and how to move through it. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tailor my answer a bit to you without saying like for you specifically. I'm going to say, entrepreneurs in the software or people who are selling a software have found value by doing this, this, and this. So it's not so specific because I don't ever want to get into a place where I'm like, David, you should hire me because I could do all these things for you. Because you're like, I don't know, Nikki, I don't know you that well, right? Like it totally turns people off when you start telling people what they should do. As a matter of fact, one of my friends that I used to do some co-training with years ago used to always say, don't should on me and I won't should on you. So we want to be really careful about how we talk to clients.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even the way you said it, like, if you're dealing with, software companies um, that are X years old, you probably would use the word entrepreneur. If you're dealing with
That's right.
another, you would say small business owner. You would say, I like, even in your example, how much you tailored it, because when you said it to me, I was like, oh, that resonated with me. Like I kind of felt like, I was like, wow, that's really cool. I immediately got it. But to your point, you tailor it to the person, to the maybe industry. And I like that you didn't just say software as a service owners and founders. You didn't go so specific like you said. So it actually felt pretty authentic and real.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what would you say, we're in a world which like more people are going to be selling over Zoom or Skype or I don't know what other video conferencing tools, Google Hangouts, right? So
Yeah.
what do people need to keep in mind when they're selling online, which I think more people are? What do they need to be mindful of?
Well, a couple things. So one is that there's some first impression stuff going on and people are making judgments about you. So how are you showing up to these calls? Like, do you look like you prepared or do you look like you just rolled out of bed and, didn't brush your hair or your teeth, right? Like, which I get on those calls sometimes with people and I'm like, this is so interesting because you're trying to earn my business, but there's a level of professionalism missing here. And I'm not saying that you have to be like, poised and perfect, but at the same time, you do want there to be a level of professionalism because people are making judgments about you, right? So what's going on around you, what's going on in your background, all of these things are going to play a factor in there. So make sure you're not doing anything that's distracting to the other person. Like I had somebody one time show up eating cereal on our call, like, so the milk is slopping everywhere. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's a part of me that wants to be like, you're killing your first impression here. This is not what I would teach a client to do. So think about that. And then the other thing is make sure that you're paying attention, that it's about the other person. So the connection needs to be with them. So even though like right now, I know your audience can't see us, but I can see you and you can see me because we're meeting out of our video conferencing, service. Like I'm actually not looking at you. I'm looking at my camera because I want you to feel a connection from my eyes to your eyes, right? So if I really want to look at you the whole time, it looks like I'm not looking at you because it looks like I'm looking down. So pay attention to these things because they matter.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, goodness gracious. Now I'm like, is my hair okay? Like,
You look
oh, no.
great.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, look, this is kind of a new world for us. I mean, we think you're a tech company or a startup company. We've been remote, but we usually do interviews and podcast episodes in office, all right? So like
Yeah.
I pull this office together and, oh my gosh, it was a spare bedroom. Now it's an office. Then it was a spare bedroom. Now it's an office again. And so
Yes.
that's why, full disclosure before the interview, I was like, Nikki, what's your setup, right? And And I think, you maybe have resources on just a really simple way to create a professional environment that if you are going to be talking with clients, especially with our community, right? You're an accounting firm owner or leader or partner, talking about sensitive client information, talking about financial future and the financial health of people you're talking to, for people not watching the video or they can't see us, Nikki, your backdrop is a plain wall with a light behind you with a high quality microphone. I think that's perfect. I think any accountant can show up and spend, I don't know what your setup costs, hundreds of dollars maybe to.
Maybe a couple $100. It wasn't terribly expensive. I'll tell you, I've recouped my investment at least 10 times over, being able to use
Yeah.
this gear and sounding good, having an image that's not distracting. Like I actually I used to have a mirror that hung behind me, which I loved because I could turn around and like make sure, I was all prepped before I got on a video call. But somebody said like that mirror is super distracting. So it goes away, right? Like,
Yeah.
so pay attention to the feedback that your clients are giving, because they will tell you. And sometimes they don't tell me in the nicest way, but they'll, tell you, but pay attention to that. And then the other thing is, I would say about the video is, be sure that you're still walking people through the steps, right? That you don't
Yeah.
just skip right over. You don't get to just go right to close because you have them on a face-to-face video call. You still have to understand, like, go through the discovery, ask about the proposal, get permission, then lay it out, then offer the close. And don't be afraid to close the deal like right there either, because that's one of the things I
Yes.
think people get nervous about. They're like, so I'll just send you the information. You can look it over and then let me know. It's like, no, don't do that at all. Like if that person is ready to go, if
Yeah.
they're ready to move to that close, like get that contract signed, take that first payment, take the money, whatever it is. And then they leave that meeting feeling super satisfied. Um, I'm just like on a roll here. So can I offer one more thing?
No, yeah. Well, before you offer one more thing, that you made me think of, if you, let's say you have knee pain, you go to a knee specialist diagnoses it, they figure out that it's because of this tendon and this ligament is off, and they have a brace that they can attach to your knee or wrap in your knee to help you kind of run again and enjoy the activities you always wanted to. And you get to the end and they say, great, I actually have the brace is here. I'm going to mail you out a form. And if you could just fill it out and then mail it back to me, then I'm going to give you the knee brace. It's like, no, like, ask for it. Like, I think that's why,
Yes.
going back to the beginning of the interview, your approach to selling, which is like, I'm trying to problem solve here. If I have a solution that can help you, I owe it to you to say, look, I think this could help. Do you want to participate? Do you want to move forward? Do you want to, whatever language feels comfortable to you? And I just want the listeners to know you're doing your clients such a disservice when all of a sudden you put up this really arbitrary friction between the conversation when you could just sign them up today and
Yeah.
start helping them right away, right? Anyways, all right, end rant was the final thing.
Well, now I want to add on to that a little
Okay.
bit too, and just say that oftentimes people don't realize that when you don't tell people what the next step is, when you don't give them like, okay, we're going to set up our first appointment to, dive into your company or whatever it is that you're going to offer for them as a service or a product, they leave feeling unsatisfied, and they may not even recognize it at a conscious level, but it's like something went wrong between you two. And so if somebody comes along between the time they get that form you sent out to them and offers them an opportunity to buy, you've lost that deal. So we never want people to walk away feeling unsatisfied. And because I teach about buying signals and I talk about them a lot, and I teach people how to ask for the sale right there in the moment when it's appropriate, people who don't ask or who don't get asked often reach out to me and go like, oh, I was just on the phone with this, company or with this guy or this gal, and they completely ignored my buying signal and never asked for my business. Like they just don't think I'm their kind of client, or they'll make up some crazy story like that person just didn't like me, or they didn't think I could afford it. And it's never true. That's not the reason they didn't ask. They didn't ask because they weren't confident in their own ability to ask. But you leave the other person the opportunity to make up some crazy story as to why you didn't make it easy for them to buy from you.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, there is a million things I think we could talk about because this is such an important topic. It's such a psychological topic. It's so important to the business, to your firm. If somebody wants to reach out, learn more, connect with you, what is the best way for them to learn about all the resources that you provide?
One of the best ways is to visit my website, and I'm going to give a special link that will get you the ability to download an ebook from me that's all about closing the sale and boosting your confidence. But then we'll be connected because I'll email it to you. There will be some other emails that come as ways that we could potentially work together and connect. So if you visit yoursalesmaven.com/growing your firm, all one word, growing your firm, then you can download that ebook. You'll be right on my website. All the information's there. Please connect with me. I want to hear, what's your question? What was your takeaway from this? Hopefully you had an aha moment.
Yeah, and I'm going to challenge the community a little bit more. If you heard one thing today, go out and try it to apply it and then let Nikki know how it went. If you want to get on somebody's radar, listen to interviews like this, apply one or two of the ideas you heard, and then send it over to them. Boy, well, you're going to stand out if you do that. So, and look, if you're running around, hopping around, skipping around, if you're on ladders or stairs or climbers or ellipticals or a treadmill or bicycle, I guess everyone's buying Pelotons these days, right? Like that really expensive bike with like the big screen TV on front of it. Maybe you're doing one of that and you couldn't jot down all of the notes, the tips, the tactics, the frameworks that Nikki was talking about today. Well, good news, it's at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. There'll be a 1,000 plus word write-up on everything we covered today. We're going to link up the show notes. We're going to link up things about NLP. Of course, we're going to link up yoursalesmaven.com/growing your firm. Did I get that URL right?
Yes.
Perfect.
yoursalesmaven.com. Yep.
Amazing. So again, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. And if you know a firm owner that is struggling to wrap their heads around the world of sales, share this interview with them. Send it over to colleagues that could use this information. Of course, you like this interview, reach out to Nikki and leave a review. Nikki, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.